In the second part of this Caribbean Policy Development Center series on the Caricom single market and economy, we examine the free movement of people, the role of the CCJ and the impact of globalization.
I know it's very easy if you only rap to your people and tell them like me, them is one race.
We begin with by far the most controversial element of the CSME, the free movement of people.
Apart from the unpreparedness of the population of the region for CSME, we are of the view that the emphasis on professionals or university graduates is restrictive, and this position needs to be revisited if we are to weld the people of the region into one unit.
When you start off by telling me that the first set of people that you're going to let move around are the university graduates, persons like me who were just able to get a CXC examination certificate, I have to wait until this comes on stream. How long is that wait going to be? So in the first instance, it's not going to benefit people like me.
I do not know of any impediment, legal impediment, other than people who are wanted by the police, to prevent people from freely traveling within the community, in any part of the community. What I think we need to understand is that we are asking for freedom to live and work. Now that's a different thing. That involves the removal of work permit restrictions. And every government insists on the right to have that regularized within a national context.
To date, free movement is limited to university graduates with verifiable accreditation. Graduates wishing to work outside their country of citizenship must apply for a certificate of recognition of Caricom skill qualification. This free movement of university graduates is applicable to all Caricom countries except the Bahamas, Suriname, and Montserrat.
If you take a skilled, highly skilled surgeon in, say, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, brain surgeon, he's not going to find enough work to do in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But what this will allow him to do is to be able to keep his practice in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, live there, and if he wants to go down to Trinidad 2 days a week and practice at the Mount Hope or practice with a private in Trinidad, that he can do that. And 2 days he can do the same thing in Barbados, because as a skilled person, he'll be able to operate in the different countries. So this will be able to keep skilled people in the region.
In the category of media workers, artists, musicians, and sports persons, Belize, Dominica, Guyana, Jamaica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines have explicit legal provision for the movement of these persons. The territories of Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago are still to amend existing legislation to provide for the free movement of this category of worker. All member states are still to take legislative and administrative action to facilitate all other categories, including self-employed, entrepreneurs, spouses, and immediate dependent family members. The treaty will also provide for the transfer of social security benefits. This means that persons migrating from one territory to another would carry over their accumulated security benefits to their new job. Member states are still at the negotiation stage on the development of a Caricom passport. However, within the OECS, the process is somewhat more developed.
We will move to the issuance of a common OECS passport. Common in the sense that it is going to have the same color, it is going to have the same design, it is going to have written across it something to identify it as the countries being a member state of the OECS, similar to what the European Union is now doing. Legislation has just been taken to Parliament in all the OECS independent member states, and that legislation has also been gazetted. The legislation allows OECS citizens to enter and stay in any other OECS country for a period of up to 6 months as a matter of right.
But what will it mean for the average citizen? Does it mean that I will lose my job to my neighbor? Does it mean that I can set up shop in any country in Caricom without restriction?
Once a worker is productive and give us of his or her best, then I don't think that worker have any reason to fear someone taking his or her job. If you have workers in a particular country, or let's say even in a particular industry that is non-productive, and you can find workers from wherever, in the region that can enhance productivity, then by all means, that is a positive thing for the development of the country and the region.
One of the issues that have been expressed by the Caribbean youth is that you must take into account the fact that some of the territories have higher levels of skill. Barbados, Trinidad, and Guyana, and Jamaica, because they have inland universities, are able to train their populace to a lot higher degree than we have. So if you open up the markets and you have free movement of skill, the perception is that those persons who are more qualified will come from outside and come into our territories and take the jobs and whatnot.
The creation of the Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, offers citizens the legal framework to settle disputes arising from the CSME, specifically those related to the establishment of economic enterprises, the provisions of professional services, the movement of capital, and the acquisition of land for the operation of business.
The revised treaty creates a panoply, a large number of new rights and obligations for all the actors, states, community institutions, and natural and legal persons. So there will be disputes in the vindication of those rights or in how those obligations are carried out. You need one institution to ensure that there's uniformity in the law. It could never be a situation where any number of tribunals in any number of member states are making pronouncements on one treaty rule. That's chaos, like I said, and you don't get a stable investment climate, so you get zero results or negative results.
Hence, the CCJ, outside of its role as a civil and criminal court, will function as an international tribunal, hearing disputes arising from the interpretation and application of the revised treaty.
First of all, your people need their identity like one race from the same place that make the same trip.
One of the main purposes behind the CSME is to ensure that our economies can withstand the challenges to be brought from globalization and trade liberalization.
What is our protection? Here we are in for competition, but where is the local? Where is the guideline? Where is the borderline between the foreigners and the locals?
We are saying, yes, go with CSME, and let us slow down on FTA. Let us have a proper agenda on strategy to deal with FTA and WTO and EU ACP negotiations.
The Caribbean cannot possibly, within this current global context of trade liberalization and globalization, operate as individual countries. We will do so, but with very limited success. And that's proven. Because whether we want to create the single market or economy or not is going to be created for us. Because eventually, if we want to continue to participate in the global context at WTO and in the regional hemispheric context at FTAA, we will have to remove the barriers. So we will either do them at single market and economy, or we're going to have to do them at WTO.
The question for us is, can we compete in this competitive environment?
Once you have excellence in what you offer, you can compete anywhere with anybody.
The private sector has been trying to be prepared, but they've had such a long tradition of depending on the government for markets, for contracts, for even marketing the tourism product. But that dependency is something they need to break out of. They need to also recognize that if they're not strong enough nationally, exploit the single market and economy to set up regional corporations.
Banana has been one of the crops in the Windward Island that really suffers because of the agreements and different stipulations that have been set out, and because of that, the drawback is that a lot of the preferential treatment that we used to have, we have lost them. Okay, we lost them. The volumes that we used to sell to England, we cannot, because it had affect the farmer. So he cannot produce the volumes that we used to. We cannot meet the quotas that we used to produce. So because of that, we suffer in our pocket.
As policymakers and average citizens, are we willing to put aside our cultural and political differences for the betterment of the region?
What is keeping back the unifying of the Caribbean is the fact that who's going to be the big dog?
Once the politicians come together, and you have to remember that a lot of the politicians in the region have their own interests at heart. They're not going to be the big fish in a small tank.
The CSME will change the way we travel, work, conduct business, and even attain our education. But do we all know about and understand the CSME?
Take an average young person, say in Grenada, or say in maybe Nevis, St. Lucia certainly, and you ask them what is CSME. An average young person, the possibility of they being able to give you an accurate answer is quite low. Most people don't even know the acronym CSME.
I think really that the way the CSME has been conceptualized, I think really it has not taken into consideration fully the concerns of small producers, like in Barbados, small agricultural producers, and I think we have to be very careful about that.
The only persons that have a clear idea of what they're doing is the government. And government tends to be so close with information. They tend to release information so slow that by the time you get the information, it is virtually of no use to you.
Have policymakers done enough to help people understand the CSME?
I can't tell you yes or no, because I got the understand about this Caricom and anything, so I don't got the understand about that.
But the Caribbean government have to do more, because they poops in, all them poops in.
The second big challenge, which links to the information, and we haven't solved this at all, is the information to a broad enough range of people and interest groups in countries and across the space, the economic space, to say what it is and how are they likely to be affected.
The point is that as consumer representatives, we have an obligation, even though we do not have the resources, we have an obligation to press the governments to do its part of keeping the people informed.
I think what needs to take place is a higher degree of engagement and dialogue with and of the private sector.
Policymakers have to be open to not only youth participation, but participation from people across socioeconomic brackets and participation of women in decision making. And not only open to it, but they must be also willing to take the step where they create the structures where this participation could be made possible. And that's really important, because we often talk about participation of different groups, marginalized groups, but if we don't create the structures and context in which these groups can contribute to decision making and to policy, then we spin and top in mud.
Despite these challenges, there is a feeling amongst Caribbean people at all levels of the society that the CSME is essential to our survival.
And unless the Caricom people can unite, it's only then we can get some kind of thing.
And if we want to be integrated and we see it as something of our survival, our governments have no choice.
Regional leaders have put in place a timetable for the implementation of the CSME.
But we are not at the stage where all countries have identified all the restrictions which they have in place. By restrictions we mean where they have a requirement of a national of another Caricom country, which is more stringent than the requirement for their own nationals. And in February, everybody agreed on the schedule on which they're going to remove those restrictions. They have up to 2005 to complete the process.
The CSME, one economy, free movement, open markets, the promise of greater integration and cooperation. But remember, you must also be prepared to deal with some challenges. Play your part, ask questions, find out more. Contact your local Ministry of Trade, your local immigration office, and of course the CPDC for more information on the Caricom single market and economy.
Good for my unity, work of all your people need their identity like one race, from the same place, that make the same trip, on the same ship. So we must push one common intention, it's for a better life in the region, for we women and we children. That must be the ambition of the Caribbean man, the Caribbean man, the Caribbean man. Caricom is wasting time. The whole Caribbean gone blind. If we don't know from where we come in, then we